The rain falls, yet the wind is no longer cold, because beneath the porch someone is stitching together a breath-long silence. Some people pour 2 cups of coffee each morning, not for someone who will arrive, but for someone who has gone and never truly left. In a place the maps avoid, a man lives with silence day after day, never hoping for a knock at the door. Until one morning, 9 Apache girls appear at the gate, asking nothing, begging no lodging. And he, the man who thought his heart sealed shut, steps back, allowing the door to open. Not because they need to come in, but because at last he cannot bear to lock it closed. Dust Creek does not appear on the maps, used by those seeking a path, and the little wooden house at the edge of the cracked cliff, where the soil is too poor to farm, the breeze too harsh for any traveler to pause, is where Harlan Beckett chose to live. Or rather, to remain silent. He rises before dawn, not from habit, not from necessity, but simply because the night is too long. Before the sun can stretch its light over the eastern bluff, he has already kindled the stove with 2 short lengths of wood, a wartime habit of frugality. Setting the black iron kettle over glowing coals, Harlan does not watch the fire. Its warmth no longer reaches him. The kettle waits for the boil. In the meantime, he pours cold water into 2 cracked glazed ceramic cups. One he places to his right, the other opposite, beside the chair that is dusted clean every Friday, though no one has sat in it for 14 years. The handkerchief lies there too, perfectly folded, its creases sharp as when she first arranged it. Never used, yet always washed, always hung to dry in the same sunlight she once favored. Harlan does not glance across the table. He bows his head, sipping the coffee in slow, ash-like gulps. The faintly burnt aroma stings his eyes, or perhaps it is the kitchen smoke. The kitchen is so silent that the spoon's clink against the cup echoes like a blade slicing memory. On the wall hangs an old plank, its carved letters faded. He meant to restore it, but never did. Boone, the old dog, lies by the stove, hobbling ever since a forest trap caught his leg, yet still dragging himself into the yard each evening. He no longer barks. Harlan thinks he has forgotten the sound of his own voice, just as Harlan has forgotten how to speak what is unnecessary. Wind drifts through the wooden door's gap, lifting ashes from the hearth tray. He does not close it. The wind at Dust Creek enters unbidden, needing no invitation. On the table, the coffee cools. The cup opposite remains full, and the silence so familiar it no longer aches. He stands, washes the cups, and returns them to the wooden tray. Each morning he carefully rearranges that tray, draping the cloth as though someone might drop by unannounced. Beneath the window ledge he tends a pot of purple flowers, the blooms, she once said, open as if they need no one to admire them. Harlan cannot recall their name, only their scent, soft like her hair before it dried. When he leaves the kitchen for the stable, the handkerchief drifts from the cup to the floor beside his boots. Harlan bends to leave it, but then his hand, calloused and no longer wanting to grasp anything, lifts it, and instead of refolding it as always, he hesitates, fingertips grazing its edge. A loose thread unfurls, pale purple, the same hue as the flowers on the windowsill. He stands frozen. The wind stills, yet something within him has paused, not because of the handkerchief, but because his hand, the hand he thought only fit to wield hammer and hoe, trembles slightly, as though touching again something he once loved, then let slip away. And for a moment, the cold resolve he has long held softens at the frayed fold. When the sun peaks above the eastern cliff, casting its muted gray light over the mottled roof, Harlan stands beneath the gutter, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He does not like repairing the house at dawn, but last night's rain dripped through the roof, soft yet persistent enough to leave his pillow damp come morning. In his hand is the old hammer, its handle worn smooth by use, its iron head cracked like the scar on his own ankle, a reminder of a shared moment and a shared mistake. A loose board on the porch needs securing. He presses the shaft against the post and taps firmly but gently. Each blow sheds fine dust that drifts down the steps, dispersing in the weak sunlight like morning mist. Boone, the old dog, lies a few paces away, eyes closed, though his ears still twitch. He need not guard anyone. There is no one left to guard at Dust Creek. Yet he remains there, like a clock that has stopped marking hours, but still ticks softly when the wind shifts. Sweat beads at Harlan's nape. He wipes it away, his palm brushing his shirt front. A smudge of oil from the door hinge stains the fabric, an irregular circle like a patch of sunlight through dense leaves over a hand-stitched gray cloth patch she made by hand, saying, "To remind you of that day." He has forgotten what day that was. Yet he never removed the patch, and now the oil bloom spreads across it. He studies it long, then lifts the hammer again and resumes his work, this time more slowly. The front door never locks. The hinge is rusted. Its creak in the wind. Steps inside, hangs the hammer on its hook. The door swings a few inches open, caught in a gust. He does not push it shut. He merely stands, watching the sliver of light across the worn floorboards, marked by scratches like the claws of someone who once slipped and fell. Boone shuffles inside, nestles at the table's leg, sighing as though he has grown too old to hope for surprises. On the dining table, the handkerchief, folded again that morning, lies untouched. Not a corner has shifted. Yet Harlan sees it differently now, not as an object, but as an unasked question lingering in the air. He draws a small piece of wood from the drawer, its surface still faintly scented with old varnish, and begins to pare away its dust with a pocket knife. He does not intend to craft anything. His hands must stay busy, or else his heart will stir. Then he stops. In that stillness, a faint sound falls from outside, not loud, not near, like stone brushing against dry wood. Harlan does not turn. He simply tilts his head, listening. Wind again. But this time, the wind carries a different scent. The smell of damp bark, of fresh turned earth, of someone who traveled far and may now be standing very close. He does not step outside. He merely touches the fresh stain on his shirt, stroking it lightly. His finger pauses at the edge of the old patch, and in that instant he seems to recall a small detail, a moment when she stood in the rain, offering him her coat, her hands likewise smeared with oil. She was angry then, yet the next morning she sewed the tear herself, not because she forgave, but because she believed everything could be mended if done with kindness. And so the coat endures, the oil mark remains. She has long since gone, the rain falls, yet the wind is no longer cold, because beneath the porch someone is stitching back together a breath that had fallen silent. Some people pour 2 cups of coffee each morning, not for someone who will arrive, but for someone who is gone, yet never truly left. In a place even maps avoid, a man lives alongside silence, day after day, never hoping for a knock at the door. Until one morning, 9 Apache girls appear at the gate, no questions asked, no lodging requested, and he, the man who thought his heart was locked shut, steps back to let the door open. Not because they need to come inside, but because at last he cannot bear to lock it closed. Dust Creek does not sit on the maps of those seeking a path, and the little wooden house at the edge of the cracked bluffs where the soil is too poor to farm, the wind too harsh for any traveler to linger, is where Harlan Beckett chose to live, or rather, to remain silent. He rises before the dawn is fully light, not out of necessity, not out of habit, but because the night is too long. Black iron kettle over the coals. Harlan does not watch the flames. Their warmth no longer reaches him. The kettle waits for the boil. Meanwhile, he pours cold water into two cracked glazed ceramic cups. One goes to his right, the other opposite beside a chair, dusted clean each Friday, though no one has sat in it for 14 years. The handkerchief lies there too, perfectly folded, its creases as crisp as when she first arranged it. Never used, yet always washed. Always hung to dry in the same sunlight she once favored. Harlan does not glance across the table. He bows his head, sipping his coffee in slow, ash-like gulps. The faint aroma of burnt coffee stings his eyes, or perhaps it's the smoke from the stove. The kitchen is so silent that the spoon's clink against the cup sounds like a blade cutting through memory. On the wall hangs an old wooden plank with faded carvings. He intended to restore it, but never did. Beneath the table, his leather boots sit neatly, as if he himself is just a passing guest. Boone, the old dog, lies by the stove, hobbling ever since a trap caught his leg in the forest, yet still dragging himself into the yard each evening. He no longer barks. Harlan thinks he's forgotten how to use his voice, just as Harlan has forgotten how to speak what is unnecessary. A breeze drifts through the gap in the wooden door, lifting embers from the hearth tray. He does not shut it. The wind in Dust Creek never asks permission, nor does it need an invitation. On the table, the coffee cools. The cup opposite remains full, its warmth still faintly lingering. Sometimes he pretends to place the spoon in that cup by mistake, then withdraws it as though someone might be watching. But no one is. Only the wind, the scent of old wood, and the silence, so familiar it no longer aches. He stands, washes the cups, and returns them to the wooden tray. Each morning he carefully rearranges that tray, draping the cloth, as if someone might drop by unannounced. Below the windowsill he tends a pot of purple flowers, the blooms she once said, open as if they need no one to admire them. Harlan cannot recall their name, only their scent, soft like her hair before it dried. When he leaves the kitchen for the stable, the handkerchief drifts from the cup to the floor by his boots. Harlan bends to ignore it, but then his hand, calloused and no longer wanting to grasp anything, gently picks it up, and instead of refolding it as always, he hesitates, fingertips brushing its edge. A loose thread unfurls, pale purple, the same hue as the flowers on the windowsill. He stands frozen. The wind stills, yet something within him has paused, not because of the handkerchief, but because his hand, the one he thought only fit to hold hammer and hoe, peeks above the eastern cliff, casting its muted gray light across the mottled roof. Harlan stands beneath the gutter, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He does not enjoy repairing the house at dawn, but last night's rain leaked through the roof, soft yet persistent enough to leave his pillow damp come morning. In his hand is the old hammer, its handle worn smooth by use, its iron head cracked like the scar on his ankle, a reminder of the same moment, the same mistake. A loose board on the porch needs securing. He leans against the post and taps firmly, but gently. With each blow, fine dust drifts down the steps, dispersing in the weak sunlight like morning mist. Boone, the old dog, lies a few paces away, eyes closed, though his ears still twitch. He no longer needs to keep watch. No one remains at Dust Creek to guard. Yet he stays, like a clock that has stopped marking hours but still ticks softly, when the wind shifts. Sweat beads at Harlan's nape. He wipes it away, brushing his shirt front. A smudge of oil from the door hinge stains the fabric, an irregular circle, like a patch of sunlight through dense leaves, over a hand-stitched gray cloth patch she once made, saying, "To remind you of that day." He has forgotten what day that was, yet he never removed the patch, and now the oil bloom spreads across it. He studies it long, then lifts the hammer again, resuming his work, this time more slowly. The front door never locks. The hinge is rusted. Its creak in the wind sounds like a late visitor's footsteps. People have asked why he does not fix it. Harlan only shrugs, not out of forgetfulness, not out of laziness, simply because if one day someone returns, he wants them to hear that familiar sound. He steps inside, hangs the hammer on its hook. The door swings a few inches open in the breeze. He does not close it completely. He merely stands, watching the sliver of light across the worn floorboards, marked by scratches like the claws of someone who once slipped and fell. Boone shuffles inside, nestles at the table's leg, sighing as though he has grown too old to hope for surprises. On the dining table, the handkerchief, folded again that morning, lies untouched. Not a corner has shifted. Yet Harlan sees it differently now, not as an object, but as an unasked question lingering in the air. He draws a small piece of wood from the drawer, its surface still faintly scented with old varnish, and begins to pare away its dust with a pocket. Merely touches the fresh stain on his shirt, stroking it lightly. His finger pauses at the edge of the old patch, and in that instant he seems to recall a small moment when she stood in the rain, offering him her coat, her hands likewise stained with oil. She was angry then, yet the next morning she sewed the tear herself, not out of forgiveness, but because she believed everything could be mended if done with kindness. And so the coat remains, the oil stain endures. She is long gone. But Harlan, for the first time in many years, feels his heart stir at a stain he once overlooked. Dust Creek does not boast a brilliant spring like elsewhere. Here, every season carries a weary familiarity, and that morning, nothing foretold that it would be special, only a pale sunlight, earth still too hard to feel warmth, and the scuff of Harlan Beckett's boots on dust packed tight by time. He steps outside, broom in hand, not to clean, but to keep yesterday's remnants from being buried by today. Boone leads by a few paces, hind leg dragging lightly. He is no longer swift, but he still performs his duty, circling the fence, sniffing as if the memory of guarding has not been taken from him. Harlan lifts his head to call him, but then stops, watching Boone hesitate, ears perked, head turned toward the wooden gate. Just outside the fence, where sand-streaked soil still bears last night's damp, lies something that does not belong here. A footprint. Small. Neat. Very light. Not his. Not Boone's. Not anyone from town. Too far away for strangers, without reason, to make the trek to Dust Creek. He slows his steps and stoops. Only one print. Not deep, but clear. The heel touches the ground, as if the one who left it did not want anyone to know they had passed. Beside the print, caught on a low cactus branch, hangs something, A piece of cloth. Hand embroidered, frayed, its thread faded by many washings. Yet the pattern remains. Gentle spirals, linked like waves. Not Western embroidery. There is an Apache touch. Harlan does not pick it up. He simply stares, longer than usual. His eyes narrow, not from the sun, but because his hand, unaccustomed to trembling, clenches the broom handle. Boone sniffs around, then lies beside the print, head pressed to the ground, as if tired, wanting only to remain close to the trace left by someone. A breeze rises from the ridge, not cold, but carrying the damp scent of the last time she stepped off the porch. Nothing guarantees this scrap belongs to someone he knows, yet inside him something feels profoundly stirred, as though an old dream has risen from the dust. He does not step forward, does not pick it up, just stands. And for the first time in many years, he does not feel alone on this path. The next morning there is no greeting, no hurried footsteps, only silence. A silence born not of loneliness, but of unspoken presence. Harlan Beckett rises earlier than usual, not from a bad dream, but because he feels something waiting for him to awaken. Not fear nor hope, just a sensation like knowing the wind blows inside the house, though the door remains shut. He splashes cold well water on his face, wipes his hands on his shirt, still stained with yesterday's oil. Boone lies, as always, by the table's leg, but his head no longer turns inward. He watches the door, and does not blink. Harlan sets the kettle on the stove, then steps onto the porch. The morning light is still pale, spreading like the ash of last night's fire. Yet enough to see them. 9 of them. 9 Apache girls standing silently beyond the fence. No one speaks, no one knocks. No hand raised, no head bowed. They simply stand, as if they stood all night or have been there longer still. Each carries a cloth sack, worn, small, their skirts dusted with earth, hair tied back, some with leather straps around their wrists. Their eyes are steady, neither fearful nor expectant nor demanding. They look toward the house, not at Harlan, but as if that place were part of them. Boone whimpers softly, rising, a movement he has not made in weeks. He steps onto the porch, neither barking nor growling, only approaching the gate. Harlan does not move. He stands in the doorway, coffee cup in hand, untouched. The coffee's aroma drifts through the air, mingling with the scent of sun, earth, and someone's hair rinsed in forest herbs. Boone stops before the smallest girl. She crouches without trembling, places her hand gently on his head. Boone does not shy away. He stands still. The one in the center is a young woman, yet her eyes hold the weight of many lifetimes, witnessed. Harlan does not know her name, but in her stance, back straight, silent, there is something very like how his wife once stood before his father when he returned from the war. No explanation needed, no apology offered. She simply stood to show she was alive. He does not step out, nor step back. His coffee cup remains at his lips, but his gaze, once cold and flat, halts before 9 who will not enter, nor turn away. The wind sweeps across the yard, lifting dust in little trails around their feet. Their skirts lift, revealing blistered bare feet. No footprints in the dust. Yet they have cut steps inside. He does not shut the door, does not invite them in, does not shake his head. He leaves a space, and a second cup of coffee placed exactly as every day. But this morning, that cup tilts ever so slightly more than usual. By midday the sun grows harsh, the western sun that does not glare, but quietly burns like the land's unending sigh. Harlan does not go out again. He stands by the window inside, hand tracing the worn edge of the table where a long scratch he meant to fix still remains. He peers through the slatted curtain, and they are still there. 9 girls, motionless, wordless, like stones breathing. Each one a story unwritten, and needing no telling. Old Boone lies down again, but his head stays raised, eyes fixed on the fence, as though even he recalls something he never lived. The breeze comes from the creek, carrying the faint murmur of water over stones. The sound those who have lived alone too long sometimes forget. But this morning it appears, clearer than spoon on cup, clearer than any footstep. Harlan steps onto the porch. A fine dust gusts against his face, carrying a scent not of these woods, but of damp firewood smoke, of clothes not yet dry, of someone who has gone far away. The girl standing in the center, there since morning, does not move. But when a shaft of sunlight slides across the threshold and touches her feet, she kneels. That motion is neither a bow nor a plea. It is gentle, like laying a palm upon still water without breaking its mirror. She removes the shoulder-strap bag slung across her body, places it on the ground, inside the fence but not pressed against the gate. A gesture just enough to be neither intrusion nor retreat. Then she stands, steps back, no word, no glance at the doorway, just steps back, leaving that bag as a silent dot under the noon sun. Harlan descends the steps, not hastily. Each footfall creaks as dry wood brushes against old nails. Boone falls in beside him, unhurried yet never straying. He stops before the bag, does not touch it at once. He regards it as one might something familiar, but whose owner one cannot recall. The flap is unfastened, ajar, as though someone withdrew their hand at the last moment. He bends, brushing a wisp of dust from his shirt. Inside lie dried seeds, wrapped in aged corn husks, and a small roll of leather, child palm-sized. At the outer edge coils a length of sinew, twisted like a spiral, knotted at the end with faded purple silk. No letter, no name, keeping each stitch even. He did not understand why someone would fuss so over cloth to be worn but one day. Now he understands. Some things survive only if tended to, even when no one remains to see. He looks up. The girl still stands there, her dark eyes straight and still, yet beneath the sunlight, where her skirt's edge lifts, there is a patch of blue thread, set slightly off from the other stitches, a small flaw, or a memory. Harlan does not nod. She does not bow. Only the small bag remains between them, and a silence unbroken. But it is that very silence, between two people who say nothing, that becomes the first bridge. Afternoons at Dust Creek arrive, unannounced. Sunlight withdraws like a courteous guest, leaving a hushed void between the wooden porch and the pale dirt. Harlan remains there, spine curved by habit, his right hand still dusty from holding the bag, his left loosely clutching the faded edge of his shirt. The bag rests motionless in his hand, unopened. No need. Its contents have spoken. Behind him, Boone silently steps back inside, as though the house is no longer a fortress to keep others out, but a refuge for those who understand silence. Harlan looks toward the 9 girls. They still stand, as though time does not move. No urging, no waiting, only presence, like mountain stone, like the afternoon breeze, simply there, needing no permission. He says nothing. Not yet. He only takes a single step backward, one step, to swing the door fully open. Not an invitation, not an acceptance, nor a belief that they will enter, but because he has grown so accustomed to keeping the door shut that he no longer remembers when he last let the wind sweep inside. Inside him is no clear decision, not "I welcome you," nor "I forgive you." Rather a hazy feeling, like hearing an old song whose words you can't recall, but knowing you once loved it. The breeze drifts in, carrying the scent of earth, of hair, and a hint of dust. The wind does not knock. The wind asks no permission, yet the wind comes with them. From outside, no one steps inside immediately. Perhaps they do not expect to. But then, in the silence, so long one could hear one's own years passing, a voice rises, soft, low, unfaltering. "Thank you for not asking where we came from." No one claims the words. Perhaps the smallest girl, or the one standing furthest back. That voice bears no name. It demands no answer. Only like a gentle... In that moment, no one steps inside, but the boundary between in and out blurs, as if the man who once shut the world out has just cracked it open a little, to see whether the world is still gentle enough to stay. No footsteps echo right after the open door. The sun has dipped toward the west, trailing oblique shafts across the floor. A light breeze stirs the drape as if it breathes a sigh. Then, one by one, they begin to enter, not at once, not in line, not in any order. Like water seeping through rock, naturally, unhurried, unsummoned. 9 Apache girls, bearing the cloth bag, carrying earth and forest mist, bearing something no one names, step onto the worn wooden floor of a house once too silent to share life with anyone. No one asks, "Where shall I sit?" No one says, "What do I need?" No one weeps, nor laughs. Yet in that atmosphere the house stirs ever so slightly, like an old chest warmed by a gentle hand to breathe again. The kitchen is not large, but each finds a place to stand. One girl adds wood to the stove. Another hangs her bag on the old hook where Mrs. Beckett once hung her harvest basket. Someone quietly wipes the table with her sleeve. No one gives orders, no one guides. Yet each does something small, as if they have always lived here, or have learned that when you enter a home, you make it live again. The youngest girl sits by the hearth's corner, the one who embroidered with light brown hair. Suddenly her eyes glisten. She does not weep aloud, no one soothes her, yet her gaze grows misty, and Harlan isn't sure why this makes his heart tremble. Not out of pity, not out of sentiment, but because he realizes he still feels, still has the ability to recognize something important happening. Though no one names it, no one meets his eyes, no one calls him to join in. Simply by being in a room with smoke, old wood, the warm scent of burning leaves, and an unfurled leather roll that opens another door, back to what he had forgotten he once knew. The meal remains unset. The incense smoke still lingers. The burning leaf scent clings in the doorway cracks, on shoulders, on someone's hair, not yet untangled. Then, the sound of hooves strikes the distance, faint but unmistakable. Harlan lifts his head instantly, not as a reflex, but like someone who has waited a long time for an old sound to return, though not hoping for it. Boone pricks his ears but does not bark. He merely rises, steps toward the door, peering east, where the dusty mountain trail cuts through red cliffs. Still far off, but the rhythm is steady. No lone rider, but a patrol or relocating soldiers. Could be someone known. Could be those who never asked why. The wait. of something unspoken. A draft creeps under the table, colder than before. The dry emptiness of Dust Creek feels stifling. One girl by the window, eyes unblinking, murmurs something in her mother tongue. Only a single sentence. No reply follows. Then, in that stillness, Talia speaks. For the first time in nearly 2 days of their stay. If they see us, they will carry our memories away. Her voice holds no fear, no bitterness, only a truth too old to hate, yet still fresh enough to hurt. Harlan does not reply at once. He hears the hoofbeats growing clearer, not many, but not few, even strides, a single call. Yes, a patrol, or soldiers on the move, perhaps acquaintances, perhaps those who never inquired why. He recalls an old story from his youth at the border post, an Apache family arrested for traveling without clear purpose, though they merely passed through the land of the mother who bore them. No blows struck, no shouts heard, yet all they carried, their names, their histories, their possessions, were gathered and burned. Harlan then neither protested nor agreed. He simply watched, but that watching returns now, sharper than any memory. Talia does not wait for him to ask. She lays her hand on the leather roll, as one about to hide a grave not yet marked. Outside, the hoofbeats slow. Someone in the group retreats toward the kitchen's back, clutching the bundle of unfinished herbs. Another dampens the embers. No chaos, no overt fear, yet every action shares one instinct: protect what cannot speak for itself. Harlan remains quiet, but within him a subtle stirring, like a door pushed from the inside. No one forces his choice, no one begs him, yet he knows this is the moment to decide whose side his home will stand with. When the hoofbeats pause on the hill, very distant yet achingly near, Harlan gently turns and heads for the back stable. Boone does not follow. He halts on the porch, watching Harlan with eyes neither judging nor urging, simply the gaze of an animal, long lived enough to know. Some things need no teaching, only the freedom to happen. Behind the old stable, once used for goats when Harlan's wife was still alive, lies a cellar door. Old, small, hidden by rotted planks and ivy that's grown undisturbed for over a decade. Harlan kneels. His knees creak like aged floorboards. His hand reaches into the tangle of vines, not hurriedly, but not hesitantly. Each tug frees a fragment of memory from its hiding place. Beneath the dry earth he finds a wooden latch. He once dug this cellar, not for provisions, but to bury a name. Does not look around. But his voice rises, not loud, not warm, not trembling, only matching his breath. If you need a place to hide. Know who you are. Know why you came. Know, trust me. Just a short phrase, leaving space for them to choose. No one rushes forward, no one clutches at him. But one girl, unnamed, steps toward him, places her hand on his shoulder. No patting, no gripping, merely arresting, like laying a warm cloth on someone newly awakened. That touch bears no fear nor thanks. It bears only the affirmation that he has chosen to stand by something he does not fully understand but feels compelled to protect. The distant wind still carries the echo of hoofbeats, neither loud nor close, but enough to know someone is searching. In Harlan there is no panic, only a calm born of knowing. He is no longer standing on life's sidelines, but has stepped a foot into its center, uncertain where it may lead. The house falls silent again, as if none had ever arrived. Outside, the hooves have turned another way, or perhaps merely paused on their route. No one speaks of it, yet the way everyone resumes their tasks, with hands, with eyes, without questions, shows they know. The most precious things often have only a brief time to exist in quiet. Talia does not rejoin the group. She remains by the cellar door. Her hand lifts the leather roll, and this time she does not re-roll it, but spreads it across the rough wooden floor as one unfolds an old blanket on a bed grown cold. No one sits near, no one intrudes, yet all turn gently toward her, not with their feet but with their hearts. Talia kneels. No ceremony, no ritual. She takes a dry pine twig, still clinging bits of resin, and lights it. Not to purify, not to drive away, but to summon the one who taught her what she is about to do. The white smoke drifts through the leather coils, clinging to the spirals as if to read each line. Talia begins. She speaks no words. She simply points, her finger lightly touching each emblem as if touching the brow of a loved one in farewell. At every spiral, her finger lingers, her eyes unblinking, as if speaking something by sheer presence, rather than sound. Then she takes a drawing stick, not a feather, but a small wooden rod, whittled by flint, its tip stained with red earth. She inscribes alongside the symbols, not to add meaning, but to recall lines grown faint. At that moment the smallest girl, the one with the clearest gaze, raises her hand to her mouth. Not from fear, not from cold, but as if recalling her grandmother's voice. After so many he thinks of his wife, of the times she sat embroidering in silence, of the faded red stitches passing through her fingers, not to display, but so one day will still remember. And now he understands. To remember is not to preserve, but to share a moment in the way it must live. The next morning, no one speaks of the night before. The sun rises slowly, as if cautious before the silence still lingering on the porch. Dew coats the dry grass, then vanishes before anyone can name it. Harlan sits by the window, holding a cup of tea gone cold. He does not drink it. He does not intend to pour more, yet he keeps holding it. Outside, the girls have set to work. No one gives directions, no one divides tasks, and yet each somehow knows exactly what must be done, as if they have lived here for years. One smooths a broken section of roof with a sharpening stone, another braces the loose storm frame, a girl reties the chicken coop's rope, something his wife used to do each morning, though there were few hens left. No one calls Harlan, nor does anyone wait for him to join. But each hammer strike, each footstep, echoes in his heart like the breath of a house being awakened. He looks at his hands. Once sinewy fingers used to grip reins, to hold a broken hoe, to pound walls when he did not know how to weep. Now they only twitch at the table's edge, as if testing what strength remains. And he stands, not out of necessity, not because anyone asked, but because suddenly he misses the sound of hammer on wood, not to build, but to preserve. Harlan moves behind the house. No one notices, or perhaps they choose not to. He enters the old shed, so long unused that he cannot remember what lies inside. In its far corner, an old tin of rusty nails remains from the winter his wife died. Beside it, warped planks, bent but not broken. He pulls them out slowly, as one might unearth memories long buried. No one rushes to help, no need. But when he begins to nail a plank back in place, a hand offers him the hammer. It is Talia. She says nothing. She only watches, not to question, but to acknowledge he has chosen. He nods once. No thanks, no smile. Yet when the first nail sinks home, he hears something else, very small, very faint, but unmistakable. a pulse beating again in his chest. Not his heart, not exactly hope, but a vague sense of usefulness. From a distance, Boone lies in the sun on the bottom step. He does not look at Harlan, but gazes toward the field, once abandoned, now haunted by returning footprints. He drives the second nail. He does not think of tomorrow, nor whether they will depart.
Lamp. Not electricity, but a true flame, dancing on pine logs, casting shifting shadows on the walls like stories told by hand. One girl tends the fire, squatting as though she has done this since childhood. Another slices greens with a flint knife, each thin ribbon of leaf sounding like wind through dry branches. Harlan does not enter the kitchen, no need. He stands in the doorway, hand resting on the frame, eyes unfocused. But when the aroma of stew drifts through cracks, herbs he does not know, roasted roots evoking the seasonings his wife once cured in rock salt, he quietly pulls a chair forward. At dinner there is no "help yourself," no "is it good?" Only ladles poured evenly, only the soft tap of wooden spoons on clay bowls. There is Boone, curled before the hearth, his ears twitching to the stove's draft. There is Harlan, seated to one side. No one speaks to him, nor needs to. On the table, 10 portions, not 6, not 9, but 10, counting him. Each bowl placed neatly upon the old tablecloth, its half-stitched embroidery long left unfinished by his wife, who once said, "Perhaps beauty needs no completion." The chair at the head remains empty. No one sits, no one gestures, yet everyone leaves it free, an unspoken custom. And no one asks, who is that seat for? But Harlan knows, and perhaps they too. It is for someone yet unnamed, yet still present in the smallest way, in the shared heartbeat of this home. After the meal, no one rises first. One washes dishes, another gathers firewood, some spread blankets in the corner. Talia ties back her hair, sitting with her back to the door, but her shoulders are relaxed, her hips unguarded, as if she has learned to live in a home of her own, though her name remains absent from any papers. Harlan exhales, a breath not of fatigue, not of sorrow, but as one who has lived too long in silence, now feeling his chest remember how to breathe with another. That morning the sky is clear and the breeze gentle, as if no flight had ever occurred. The sun rests lightly on the hill behind the house. The wind carries the scent of moss on stone, damp yet clean. Boone lies on the stoop, eyes half closed, tail flicking in daydream of a past no longer real. Harlan tends the withered window box grasses, not because he believes they will revive, but because, somehow, his hand lifted the watering can by habit. Talia approaches, silent as every other time she has appeared. In her hand is a small indigo pouch, edges warm. Seeds, but he cannot identify them. Round, rough-skinned, some already cracked. They smell of old sunshine, distant earth, and something like the land of one's birth. Before he can ask, Talia speaks, not as one presenting an object, but as one recalling what all once knew. "Not to eat," she says, "but to remember." Then she turns away, as though that phrase were a memory, not a line of dialogue. Harlan does not ask, remember what, nor where to plant them. He only looks out to the backfield, where grass grows wild, and a circle of turned soil still bears the imprint of his own hand, dug and abandoned. There his wife once sowed sunflowers, not to harvest, not to sell, but so that, in summer, we might see gold once more. Harlan clutches the seed pouch, gently, firmly, not gripping, not letting go, only holding, as one who once lost something precious, now afraid to drop it again. No one stands close. No one praises the gesture, but the way he replaces the watering can, slowly, softly, and walks toward the back garden, speaks enough. He has understood what was unspoken. And he chooses not to let it drift away like summers past. The first rain does not arrive with thunder. It comes like a knock at midnight, unhurried, unannounced, yet enough to stir sleepers without fear. Drops patter on the old tin roof, the same sheets Harlan once meant to replace but never found a good reason. The rain is light, yet persistent. The sky is not gray, only subdued. The trees do not bow, only stand still. Harlan sits by the window, a thin blanket across his shoulders, the same one his wife used each season's turn. The tea on the table sends up a faint steam, not from heat, but because this house now holds its moisture within. On the porch, Boone lies curled, no bark, no stir, but his ears tilt toward the house, as if to confirm all are still here. Soft laughter drifts from the kitchen, not loud, not lingering, but unfamiliar. Harlan turns to look. The smallest girl, usually so quiet, sits sewing. Head bent low, the needle rising and falling slowly. Her small hands at work, the back of her dress the color of earth. Harlan sits by the window, holding a cup of tea gone cold. He does not drink it. He does not plan to pour more, yet he still holds it. Beside him, the girls have begun their work. No one signals, no one divides tasks, yet somehow each knows exactly what to do, as if they have lived here for a long time. One uses a sharpening stone to smooth a rotten roof plank, another braces a loose storm frame. A girl reties the rope around the chicken coop, the same chore his wife used to do, each broken hoe, pounded walls when he could not cry. Now they only twitch at the edge of the table as if testing what strength remains. And he stands. Not out of necessity, not because anyone asked, but because he suddenly misses the sound of hammer on wood. Not to build, but to preserve. Harlan moves to the back of the house. No one notices, or perhaps they choose not to. He steps into the old shed, a place so unused even he cannot remember what's inside. In the far corner, a tin of rusty nails remains from the winter his wife passed away. Beside it lie a few warped but salvageable planks. He pulls them out slowly, as one might unearth memories long buried. No one rushes to help, no need. But when he begins to nail a plank back into place, a hand offers him the hammer. It is Talia. She says nothing, she only watches, not to question, but to acknowledge that he has chosen. He nods once, no thanks, no smile, yet as the first nail sinks home, he hears something else, so small and faint yet unmistakable, a pulse beating again in his chest. Not his heart, not quite hope, but a quiet sense of being useful. From a distance, Boone lies in the sun on the bottom step. He does not look at Harlan, but gazes across the field, once abandoned, now marked by returning footprints. He drives in the second nail. He does not think of tomorrow, nor whether they will leave. He only hammers because today, for the first time in 14 years, he is not fixing something for himself alone. Evening falls as it always has, slowly, without announcement, like an old mother who gently parts the hair of her home without waking anyone. By then, the kitchen fire is burning. Not a lamp, not electricity, but a true flame, crackling on pine logs, casting shifting shadows on the walls, like stories told by hand. One girl tends the fire, squatting as though she's done it all her life. Another slices greens with a flint knife,
each thin blade sounding like wind through dry leaves. Harlan does not enter the kitchen, no need. He stands in the doorway, hand resting on the frame, gaze unfocused. But when the aroma of stew drifts through the cracks, herbs he cannot name, roasted roots evoking the seasonings his wife once cured in rock salt, he quietly pulls a chair close. At supper there is no help yourself. No, is it good? Only the even ladle of soup, the soft tap of wooden spoons on clay bowls. There is Boone, curled before the hearth, his ears flicking at the stove's draft. There is Harlan, seated at one side. No one speaks to him, nor is it needed. On the table, 10 servings, not 6, not 9.
Perhaps they do too. It is for someone as yet unnamed, but still present in the smallest way, in the shared heartbeat of this home. After supper, no one rises first. One washes dishes, another gathers firewood, a few unfold blankets in the corner. Talia ties back her hair, sitting with her back to the door, but her shoulders are relaxed, her posture at ease. As though she has learned to live in a home never listed on any papers. Harlan exhales, not in fatigue, not in sorrow, but as one who has lived too long in silence, now feeling his chest remember how to breathe with another. That morning the sky is clear and the breeze gentle, as if no flight had ever occurred. The sun rests lightly on the hill behind the house. The wind carries the scent of moss on stone, damp yet pure. Boone lies on the stoop, eyes half closed, tail flicking in a dream of something no longer real. Harlan waters the withered herbs by the window, not because he thinks they will revive, but because, somehow, his hand still lifts the can by habit. Talia approaches, silent as ever. In her hands is a small indigo pouch, edges worn smooth, as though passed through many hands. She does not say, "Here, this is for you," nor "Keep it safe," nor "This is a gift." She only offers it, with both hands, steady yet without demand. Harlan stops watering. He does not meet her eyes, but does not look away. He takes the pouch with both hands, as though it might vanish, if not held just so. It is light. When he opens it, he finds small kernels like seeds, but cannot identify them. Round, rough-skinned, some cracking open. They smell of old sunshine, distant earth, and something like the land of one's birth. Before he can ask, Talia speaks, not as one presenting an object, but reminding him of what everyone once knew. Not to eat, she says, but to remember. Then she turns away, as though that phrase were a memory, not a line of dialogue. Harlan does not ask, remember what, nor where to plant them. He only looks to the back field, where grass grows wild, and a circle of cleared earth still bears the imprint of his own hand, dug and abandoned. There his wife once sowed sunflowers, not to harvest, not to sell, but so that, in summer, we might see gold once more. Harlan clutches the seed pouch, gently, firmly, not gripping, not letting go, only holding as one who once lost something precious, now afraid to lose it again. No one stands close, no one praises this gesture. But the way he returns the watering can, slowly, softly, and walks toward the garden, speaks volumes. He has understood what went unspoken, and he chooses not to let it drift away like summers past. The first rain does not arrive with thunder. It comes like a knock at midnight to replace but never found a reason to. The rain is light yet persistent. The sky is not gray, only hushed. The trees do not bow, only stand. Harlan sits by the window, a thin blanket draped over his shoulders, the same one his wife once used each season's turn. The tea on the table sends up a faint steam, not from heat, but because this home now keeps its warmth inside. Outside, Boone lies curled on the porch. No bark, no stir, but his ears tilt toward the house, as if to confirm everyone is still there. Soft laughter drifts from the kitchen. Not loud, not lasting, but new. Harlan turns to look. The smallest girl, usually so silent, sits sewing. Her head bent low, the needle moving slowly. Her small hands working, the earth brown of her dress blending with the dim light. Beside her lies a fresh scrap of cloth. No pattern, no design. Only stitches running evenly, like a heartbeat beneath her wrist. No one told her to embroider. No one told her what to do today. Talia tends the stove, one hand scattering sawdust, the other holding the kettle warmed by steeped roots. A scent rises from there, bitter at first, but softening with each breath. Harlan looks up at the porch roof. At the left edge, rain begins to leak through a crack, dropping onto the step like the tap of a familiar finger. He stands. No word, no groan, no weary stretch, as though age pressed on him. He walks to the back shed, finds a straight plank among the scrap wood, fetches the tin of nails. Only 3 remain untarnished. He grips the hammer, his wrist knotted with veins yet steady. He seals the porch's edge, not out of fear of a leak, not to keep dry, but because someone is stitching right beneath that spot. Each strike is solid yet gentle, not to break the silence, but to add a note to the quiet melody playing in his chest. The rain still falls, but the wind no longer cold. Harlan moves to the back door, gazing at the patch of ground behind the house, where he once hastily filled the garden his wife left behind. Now that plot shows new furrows. The rows are uneven, the soil unlevel. But within them, a few seeds have been sown. He does not ask who did it, nor does he praise them. Yet his hand smooths his raincoat, buttons it neatly, as though today is not merely a rainy day, but a day to be kept with care. From above, the sound of needle on cloth remains steady. Boone lifts his head slightly, just enough to confirm he is still here. Some things need not be written to endure. Tea. He stands watching its steam rise, then sets it down. Outside, Boone remains curled on the step. The girls still sleep, huddled together in the corner like fledglings resting after a long flight. Harlan opens the shed door, not to fetch a tool, nor to find something forgotten, but because he remembers. A small plank his wife once said to keep, so we can write the baby's name on it someday. That wood never served its purpose. No name was ever carved. But today, he finds it again. No dusting off, no resanding. He simply takes his carving knife, the same one used long ago to shape horseshoes, and carefully carves each letter. Not quickly, not evenly. Each cut deliberate, yet deep. The wood sighs beneath his hand, not creaking, not snapping, but yielding as a memory makes its way into its grain. He does not carve a name. He does not note the date. He only etches a single line, plain but clear. Those who once were silent now sow memories. No one sees, no one knows. He does not call anyone to look. He simply plants that wooden marker at the garden's edge where fresh sprouts push through the soil. Then he returns inside, sits down, lifts the cold cup of water and takes a sip. No words, but his gaze, for the first time in 14 years, no longer lingers on the empty chair across the table. That afternoon, when the light softens, someone steps into the garden to water the plants. The smallest girl, the one who's been stitching in silence, passes by the marker and stops.
She does not read the inscription. She does not ask. She simply bends, picks up a small stone and places it gently beneath the carved words, as if to anchor them against the wind. No one speaks, but as she turns to go inside, she brushes Harlan's shoulder with her hand, without looking, without nodding, yet enough for him to know. Someone saw and understood. The next morning, the wind shifts. No longer from the east, where cavalry once appeared, no longer carrying the scent of fearful ashes, only the fragrance of wet wood, sun-dried hair, and something Harlan cannot name, but knows well. It has not filled this house for 14 years. On the porch, strands of braided hair, hair of both the living and the lost, hang suspended by twisted sinew. They sway in the morning light like the breath of someone emerging from a long night without losing himself. Boone lies still on the step, head resting on his paws, breathing evenly. Harlan sits beside him, fingers loosely intertwined on his knee. No waiting, no planning, only remaining. The stove, as if to say, "We do not carry everything, for we do not leave entirely." Harlan does not ask, "Are you going?" He only stands, straightening his coat, not from cold, but because something in his chest needs to be arranged just so. He steps onto the porch, looks around, not to count, nor to check, only to see that everyone is here and no longer needs to be named. Talia meets his gaze, for the first time in many days, and nods. Nothing more. No smile, no tear, no words. But Harlan sees clearly. For the first time in 14 years, he no longer lives alone. Not because the house now holds people, but because his heart no longer keeps the door locked. Below the fence, the seeds have begun to crack open. No need for constant tending, no need for urging. They sprout as one relearns faith, slowly, in silence, but genuinely. And if anyone asks, what happened in that old house at Dust Creek? Nothing grand, no battles, no miracles. Only a man who once remained silent opened his door, and by that small act, a new season began, born on the tiniest things a heart once thought lost. Some leave like the wind, carrying nothing, yet changing everything forever. And some stay, not because they still have words to speak, but because they have learned how to be silent without loneliness. If you have ever poured a cup of tea for someone who is no longer here, if you have ever held on to a small object not for its value but for its memory, if you have ever lived through a season thinking you felt nothing at all, then perhaps you understand Harlan. And those girls. We do not need to be anyone extraordinary to become part of a story. We only need to be kind enough to stay when others have gone. If any part of this story made you pause a little longer, leave a note. It need not be long. Just a sentence for someone you remember. Or for yourself, in those seasons you thought you could not survive. Thank you for staying until the end. May somewhere in your heart a door have opened, if only just a little.